Okay, everybody, welcome to Kick the Can podcast. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Um, you can't put on the news or anything the last few days with, a reporter at the airport and all of this holiday travel, the roads, the planes. So I started to think about some travel stories or things I wanted to share when I used to travel back in the day. And if you take away, I know I shared a couple of stories already about the travel, but when I used to travel with the entertainers, it was, the travel was the work part of it too. And the show part, sure, the show goes on, and the entertainer goes out there, does his thing. But it's always, if there's anything to relate or making a memory, like for myself, it always had something to do with the travel. One travel event that I wanted to share with you guys is I went to Hong Kong for pretty much one day with Paul Anka, and it was like a private event. So it's these corporations would have their annual meeting, I guess, and then they would have dinner and entertainment, and it was widely popular, not only for like the Paul Ankas and the Liza Minnellis of the world. Pop stars, folk stars, country western. I'm sure nowadays that market is still there for these entertainers to go in and out, make a quick hit. You don't have to bring the whole entourage. Technically, it's just a ballroom. So, and usually the event pays for the hotel and travel. So it was always like a win-win for the entertainer, go in and out, make a quick buck, and, not the grueling schedule of tour buses, or depending on what scale you were, private jets and hundreds of people, 20 tractor-trailer trucks. So these privates were always a win. So this Paul Anka date in Hong Kong, I don't really remember what it was for. But for myself, I was living in Florida at the time. So I pretty much went from Florida to California. That was a day's travel right there. And then the next day, Los Angeles to Tokyo with a 6-hour layover. You don't go through customs or anything like that. You're like in transit kind of a thing. You don't go through customs or immigration. You just stay out by the gates, and it was horrible. It was almost felt like it was like all overnight. The hotel, the airport was dead as a doornail. And the next day, I flew from Tokyo to Hong Kong. Not a long flight, but it was a bumpy flight. And by the time I got to Hong Kong, felt like I was up for 2 days straight, and really beat up. By the time I got to the hotel, it was almost around dinner time. And the next day was when they would bring the gear, or they could the load in to bring in the whatever they needed to set up for the show that night. And basically, I had nothing to do once I got there. I don't even think I had to collect the fee or meet anybody. You're basically there just to make sure there's no glitches. I'm sure nobody really paid. My ticket was my expenses were probably included in the show package. So you get there, you're dead as a doornail. You do the show. The next day, you start coming back against the grain with your body clock, and same thing. I went Tokyo, Hong Kong, Tokyo, LA, back to Florida. And it was almost 5 days all in of flying. And it really wasn't a jet lag kind of an experience. It was more like just no sleep, eating odd hours. And people think, oh, you're traveling with these entertainers. Well, no, it's not always like that. It's you get beat up. Even when you go on these trips for 3 or 4 weeks. I went on one trip was Japan, Australia, Hawaii. And the whole thing was it was over 3 weeks. So now you have the reverse. Your body starts to get acclimated to being, 15 hours ahead of your normal. And when I got back from that trip, I had a hard time sleeping at night. I was always tired. It took a couple of weeks to get back on track from that trip. But that was a nice trip, though. I had been to Japan already a few times. I went once with Paul Anka. Australia was really great. They speak English, lovely people. Yeah, that was a nice trip. Coming home, and I wasn't used to it. This was the first time for me to travel in that respect. So you see all these, everybody's traveling for Thanksgiving. Some people go, by the time you get there on maybe Wednesday, you spend Thanksgiving. People are already heading back. If they're driving or getting to the airport, it's a lot, but it's worth it. I mean, we stayed local for Thanksgiving. It was great, but I couldn't help thinking of what other. I had we had gone after when I used to work with Frank. It was Frank, Dean, and Sammy. That Rat Pack reunion is the reason why I pretty much joined up with this tour. And after the first 3 or 4 shows, Dean Martin dropped out, and we finished that leg of the tour. It was like in the fall, September, October of it was the spring of 1988. So it was like March and April. And we just finished the whole tour just without Dean Martin. And it was just Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. It was a great show. It was great. When the fall came around of 1988, Liza Minnelli joined the show. And so it was a domestic, and we did a big tour in Europe also. So one of the stops was we were going to do a show in Stockholm, and the preceding shows were in Denmark, and we did a few shows there. And when we decided to go to Stockholm, I mean, everybody flew, but Liza Minnelli decided to take a sleeper bus, one of those coaches with the bunk beds and all of that. And on that tour, she had her dog with her. Now, in my opinion, Liza Minnelli shouldn't even be owning a dog. It's not like she's walking the dog or taking the dog to the vet. She has people for all of that. But somebody gifted the dog to Liza It was the same breed of dog from The Wizard of Oz. So somebody thought it would be a great idea to give Liza this dog, same breed as Toto, naturally the connection to Judy Garland. So she has this dog on tour with us in Europe. The dog's name was Lilly. So somewhere along the line, I don't know if anybody told her, you just can't cross borders with a dog. These countries have rules, diseases. Dogs carry diseases, whatever their problem was. We have strict restrictions on what you could bring with dogs. So nobody really checked, or if they did, they had misinformation, or maybe Liza just she thought better of herself to drive across the border with the dog instead of flying, obviously. So that would have been a snag if she tried to come in with the dog, even on a private jet. So they were coming in from Denmark into Sweden, and the dog was not detected on the bus. They went through the border crossing, and Lilly made it in to Stockholm. So we were all set up. We were all in. If I remember, we were all in one hotel. It was Sammy, that whole entourage, Liza, Sinatra crew, myself, Gary Lab was with us on that tour, naturally helping Liza out. So when they get to the hotel, naturally Lilly, the dog, needs to go out. So Bill Livornia, he was Liza's musical director. He was the drummer. Really great guy, Bill Livornia. More down to earth. He was a beatnik, basically. From the 50s and 60s. He was a musician, well accomplished apparently. But he reminded me of a beatnik. Now he was in his later day. He just pretty much played for Liza, and he was. Liza leaned on him too for, just almost like a dad figure in a way. So Bill Livornia is walking the dog. We were close to like a waterfront or a harbor, if I recall right, in Stockholm. And naturally, in Europe, paparazzi are big. Where they were outside the hotel looking for a photo of anybody. Way more than here in the States. We would do shows. You're lucky if you saw a snippet in the newspaper that Sinatra was in town or something like that. But not in Europe. Paparazzi are big. And sure enough, they take a picture of Bill Livornia walking the dog, and they put it on the front page of the newspaper the next day. So that... the immigration people, the police, they see this whole thing. There's no record of the dog coming across, no quarantine. I think the dog was supposed to quarantine for 4 weeks. So they send the cops to the hotel. They come up. They want to take the dog and hold the dog in quarantine. Make sure it doesn't have any, diseases or whatever. They're making a big thing about the dog, and I never forget being out in the outside Liza's room in the hotel when the cops were leaving, and the cops, they're not like they wear like their street clothes. the cops had like members-only jackets and jeans on. And they had the first meeting with Liza. She would not give up the dog. And we had we had a local promoter, and they had to try to iron this out somehow. And naturally, you don't want Liza to leave. You want to do the show. That's what you're there for. You're there to make the money. Bottom line, you're there to do the money, and there's a lot at stake. And nobody threatened to cancel the show that I was aware of, but it needed to be ironed out in quickly. The show was in 2 days. So they came. They didn't give up the dog. They left the police, and then they had some kind of a meeting with the police, the customs people, the promoter, Liza's management, and all of this. And meanwhile, the press is, really licking their chops with this, So I guess a slow news day, over there in Stockholm. So by the evening, they behind the scenes, they came to an agreement that Lilly would, our next stop on the tour was Paris. Well, not the very next stop, but in a couple of days, like almost a week, we would be in Paris. So they want to kick Lilly out of the country, and so they send. They say, all right, Lilly can stay one more day, but tomorrow she has to leave. So the police stayed in the hotel, right outside the door, make sure Lilly did not leave that hotel room. And then the next morning, Liza had this guy, Simon. I don't even know what his job was. Nice guy, like an artist type guy. But I think his job was just to stand outside the dressing room during the show. But he did some running around if he needed it, if Liza needed something from the drugstore or whatever. He was quite the character, nice guy. So they come up with Simon is going to take Lilly to Paris the next morning. Get this, on a private jet. So they pretty much get a car for Simon. The police follow him right to the airfield, and off goes Simon to Paris with Lilly. And he had to sit tight for almost a week. Him and Lilly, they were like in the George Sink Hotel, living it up. And Paris, dogs are like citizens there. They're in the best restaurants. They're in the best hotels. They're in the department stores. So Simon was gone with Lilly, and that really, and he was calling I can't wait for you guys to get here when the show gets here. But that was kind of Simon had a week in Paris, nobody but Lilly. So he had to take care of her too, walk her, feed her, and all of that. And when I started to think about this story, I remember reading recently with all this migrant crisis and like what we have here, but in Europe too, it's a huge problem with migrants and open borders and type of things. So I looked up. I remember here in Sweden having a hard time with open borders. They had opened their borders. They used the migrants, I guess, for work, but it was manageable. But when these other countries started to go bad, I would think something close to Sweden, Ukraine, Yugoslavia, they had a breakup. So all these folks were looking for new homes, and a lot of people went to Sweden, and Sweden was just not set up for this kind of a influx of people. They don't. The country only has like 10 million people, and as far as housing, employment, they were overwhelmed by this influx of asylum seekers and migrant workers and that kind of thing. And I thought it was kind of interesting. Like they buttoned up all their laws now and their visa policies and the asylum seekers. It's not so easy to get into Sweden anymore, and to resolve it all, so they're trying to pay the people to leave, go somewhere else, maybe go back to your country. Maybe whatever was the problem back then is not the problem anymore, and you can go back to family if you still have it there. But to me, the irony of all this was with Sweden and their open borders. You don't really know what you get in. And here they were busting balls on Liza, because this is in the late 80s, because maybe Lilly was going to bring rabies into the country. And, 25 years later, they're just letting anybody in the country and then trying to deal with it. So, this is, it just struck me as ironic that having to witness this thing with Lilly and rabies, and to see Sweden trying to turn their immigration policy around. You just show you want to be nice and helpful and all, but a small country just not set up for that kind of, influx of new people. They don't acclimate, the language. Sweden, I feel fortunate too. I happen to know good friends of ours from here in Yonkers. They're not from Sweden. My wife's friend, she's from here. She's from Yonkers. She married a Swedish citizen, and she lived there for a little bit. And I feel like, I have somebody that I know here is actually from Sweden, and I have this, and I did happen to travel to Sweden. So it was kind of ironic. I just wanted to mention that. Sweden is like, you can ride your bike people ride their bikes to work. That's all year round, and it's really like a easy breezy kind of a place, and they want to try to, keep their, that's their style and that's their lifestyle. Winter, summer, they ride bikes. Not like here where they're trying to get on the bike thing with the bike lanes, and in Manhattan they just push the cars all over just so that people can ride a bike, and that's pretty treacherous between the delivery guys and city bikes, and you can. When I drive in Manhattan, I'm always thinking, geez, it's easy to just run over one of these bikers. There's very, very little rules to follow. It's tough stuff. So that was one of the European trip. That was one of the highlights. We got the show in, and then we finally teamed up in Paris with Lilly and Simon. Another story of travel. I think it was like hurricane season in maybe 1990. We were going to do. It was going to be our first show with Sinatra. Was going to be in Houston, and there was a hurricane coming across the Gulf. We were already in Houston, and we were watching the hurricane, and the people in Houston said that the city itself back then didn't have a lot of storm drains to accommodate a big rainstorm, and we decided to, at the last minute, cancel the show. I think they were already, it was in, I guess where the Houston Rockets play. I don't know what it was called back then. So they already had started setting up the sound and lights, was getting, they were bringing the stuff in, getting ready to load up and load in. And they decided to cancel the show in Houston. And the next city was Phoenix, and we decided to just skip over Houston, take all the stuff down, load everything in the truck, and we were over 100 people, and we needed to scrape up airline tickets and hotel rooms in Arizona, and the travel agent, Anna Cruz, boy oh boy, magic. Before you know it, we were packing our bags, and we got over to, the show was in Phoenix, but we scattered around. I think a lot of us stayed out at some of these golf resorts in Scottsdale, and we had a few extra days, being that we lost the show in Houston. But hats off, you don't know. That's what makes these tours. You don't know behind the scenes. Sure, the entertainer walks out, does his thing, but sometimes it gets a little hairy to actually put it together. That was a good one too. I figure I wanted to share some travel stuff with you guys. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. And also, we Matt and I ironed out all the sound and for the remotes. We're gonna in the next episode, we're gonna have somebody call in, and maybe next week we'll have something like that. And so I'm excited about that. And what else we got? That's it, right, Matt? We'll wrap it up. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend, and kick the can. We'll talk to you guys soon.